Hello and welcome to the third and final session of this webinar series. I just want to say happy Friday to you all, and for those of you that are watching this recording on a different day of the week, then happy day of the week wherever you are. So a couple things. First of all, I want you to know that I am super thrilled and I can't wait to lead sessions in the future that are going to be more in depth in terms of the kind of work that we've been doing in these sessions up to this point. It really is a complete self-expression for me. If you didn't know that, it really is a complete self-expression for me. I love being a coach. It's something that really fills me up, and it's something that really expresses who I am, and I absolutely am passionate about not only coaching and training other coaches, but as well having the opportunity to work with other entrepreneurs just like yourself from the comfort of my own home office and from the comfort of your own home or office or cell phone or wherever you happen to be watching this webinar series. In the last two sessions, we covered vision and strategy, both of which work hand in hand. So your vision works hand in hand with your strategy. In fact, both your vision and your strategy have the same principles with which you manage them, which is what we're going to get into next, is management. So I'm going to do a quick recap of the kind of work that you want to be doing with your vision and your planning, which is going to be happening at the same time. So your session to plan is your session to think. Your session to think is your session to plan. They work together. So when you're thinking about what you're going to be creating for the year, you're also planning your year. So you're planning everything that you're working on for your year. At the same time that you're thinking and creating for your quarter is at the same time that you're thinking and planning for your quarter. At the same time that you're thinking and planning for the next 5 weeks is the same time that, so they're at the same time, right? So you want to have it become a routine to where you have a sit-down meeting with yourself, with your coach, with your mentor, with your team at the same time, once a year, once a quarter, once every 5 weeks, every week, and every day. You have a meeting, and every time you do that, there's a specific nature to it. There's a specific feel to the way in which you do it. We're going to get into management, and the next three bullets, which is management, relationships, and execution, are all it's very simple. There isn't a lot of complexity to it. I'm going to give you a couple points, a couple pointers of things to look for, really elaborate on what I'm talking about. And then in the future, we'll probably dive in more in depth in terms of what I'm actually talking about here if it doesn't get thoroughly covered. I'm going to be glancing over here because my notes happen to be over here. So with management, the implementation and the rigor with which you manage your thinking and your planning is critical. So that's a critical component to manage. That requires management on your part. It requires that you manage the updating of the different files that you create. So if you can remember when we covered in the strategy session, one of the things that we talked about was creating a file on Excel or creating a file on Google Sheets or some kind of file that tracks your promises on a quarterly and on a weekly basis that get updated on a daily, a weekly, and a quarterly basis. So the management of those files is critical, that you update once a week and daily. So it has to get managed with integrity and with a particular type of rigor. That's the first component of management. Note, that's something that if you have a manager, that's something that that person's managing for already. So they may already be managing for, when are we going to have a meeting? What vision are we creating for this team? Or they may already have a vision created and they simply just give it to you and they say, here's what you have to go to work on, or contact these many people and go make this many sales, or you know, it's something that somebody's pressing you to do. Or for example, there's a project that's due next week. It's got to get done, and they're managing you to accomplish it. Whereas when you're your own boss, you're the entrepreneur, you're the coach, or you're the person driving this thing, it requires a particular level of integrity and a particular level of rigor in with this management aspect of it. I highly recommend having a coach or a mentor, somebody that is separate from your boss. So for example, there's somebody that I work with very closely. He's a client of mine. He works for this startup company called VC. He's the director of business development. He has a boss and he has a coach. There are two different phenomenons here. His boss is the CEO. He's giving him different things that he's got to go to work on. But as his coach, I'm the person that's holding his promises. I'm the person that's holding his vision. I'm the person making sure that how he interacts with his team is exactly how he's committed he interacts with his team, that his team can perform at peak levels, right? So that comes in when you're creating your file. When I say talk about it with your mentor, your coach, I do recommend that. Track everything. So with management, it requires that you track everything. Why? Well, when you start to track everything, you start to build historical data with your effectiveness. So if you track the number of conversations that you have with people, you track the number of new people that you meet, new relationships that you establish or create, you track the number of potential clients that you interacted with or that are now prospects, you track the number of leads that you generated, you track the number of new clients that you did on a daily basis. You can now start to track this. So if you're looking at your next quarter, you can see, okay, when I'm planning for my next quarter and I'm looking at my projections in terms of what I think I'm going to project or what I'm saying I'm going to accomplish, you can see, all right, so every single Monday, that's pretty slow for me. So I'm going to say this. This is what I'm promising on Mondays. This is what I'm promising on Tuesdays. Wednesdays and Thursdays are my biggest day of the week. I just have an explosion of business on Wednesday and Thursdays. Or here's how I plan my days on Wednesday and Thursdays. It's like jam-packed with work. And then this one workshop that I had on this day of the week was like phenomenal, breakthrough. So when you plan for your next quarter, you can really see, okay, given last quarter and given I'm committed to doing an increase, with this historical data, I can now track or I can now grow someplace here. Or here's where I'm going to do an increase, here's where I'm going to do a decline. So tracking historical data is critical. And that's not just with new clients or revenues, it's not just with that, but it's with new relationships that you create, that's with new partnerships, that's with the effectiveness of the events that you have, with the effectiveness of the conversations that you're having with people. Tracking everything and tracking ratios for everything is key. So that gives you a sense of what I'm talking about when I'm actually speaking about the management aspect of it. I'm going to talk about relationships next. And I'm going to get into two types of relationships that you can have as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, or as a coach. There's the relationships that you have with the people on your team. And then there's the relationships that you have with the people that you are either your clients, their prospects, or they're people that you just met that are simply relationships. So there's the people that you interact with directly on your team. And then there's the people that you interact with that are not on your team that are any other relationship that you have. Colleagues, strictly business, okay? We're not talking about personal relationships like the relationships that you have with your significant other or your family or your friends, or some of it may apply, but remember, we're strictly talking about your business here. So with regards to your team, one of the things that C-suite entrepreneurs, especially if you create a company where it's not just yourself, and in the beginning, it might just be yourself, and you might be a sole entrepreneur, you may not have a team, but at some point, you're going to need to create a team of people that are a mini you could say, or they're working for you, or you recreated yourself in a particular form. So if you have a team as a business owner, or if you don't have a team, this applies. One of the biggest problems that we have is that companies or business owners or entrepreneurs, C-suite or entrepreneurs like yourself, one of the things they find themselves in, when somebody reaches their peak potential in the company, they leave. So executives and senior management find themselves, if they find themselves challenged by retaining their top talent. In fact, I remember reading a recent Gallup poll that was conducted on this, and they said that 2/3 of the people that are working for a particular company are thinking about leaving their job, or are actively looking at different things to leave their job. It's something that's crossed their mind, especially if somebody is in a top talent tier, as in they're a high performer in the company, or there's somebody that is really mastered their job. So one of the things that's critical, because you're going to want to have a strong team of people around you, and then there's, well, how do I retain this team of people? As an entrepreneur, you're the boss, right? You're the person that has created this. You're the one with the vision. Then you have a team of people that doesn't necessarily have the same vision that you do when you created it. So retaining your top talent can be challenging. One of the big, I'm going to talk about 4 specific points that you take this on, and your capacity to make a difference with those people will expand. The first point is being a coach for the people in your organization, being a coach for the people that you work with. So I talked about this in the first session, that was the perspective with which I was leading the entire webinar series, and it really is the case. So being a coach with the people that you interact with is huge. In fact, you could say that you want to be the kind of person where it's safe to go to you for what people are dealing with. So you don't become the boss, even though you are, but you're also the coach. So you're gonna listen to them as their biggest self-expression always. You're gonna be the person that empowers them with what they're dealing with, what they're up to in their life, in their business, like everywhere. So you're that person for them. The second component is acknowledgement. Acknowledging the people with which you work with all the time is really important. So what that looks like is creating a winning atmosphere, celebrating the small victories. That includes acknowledging them for completing projects on time. It even includes acknowledging them when they fail. So acknowledging them for really playing full out and really giving themselves to the project, and understanding that they didn't fulfill on what they were looking at fulfilling, but you're really acknowledging that they're working towards it. So acknowledgement is critical, especially when your top talent is performing. Creating a future to live into that's really big is super important. So futures expire. There are things that matter to people that they achieve, and then they don't have any future to live into. They don't have anything that they're striving for. They don't have anything that's challenging them. So ongoingly creating new challenges for people, or ongoingly creating a new future with the company, or even ongoingly creating a new area for them to develop themselves in, a new area for them to transform, a new area for them to take on as a human being, a new area to elevate their performance even more, is super important to continue to create that, what they're working towards. Even if they don't have any further movement at the company, create it. If you're committed to retaining your top talent and having them be around, that's going to be critical. The last component of how to interact with your team that's powerful in terms of relationships is creating a gap for the people on your team that is big, but not overwhelmingly big. Or creating a gap that's big enough for them to accomplish, and you can see that they can accomplish it, and at the same time, it's going to be a stretch for them. That's important, that it's a big enough gap, and at the same time, it's not this huge gap. So if you can see that this person's accountable for a specific amount of revenue with your business or with your company, and their role is to have a 5% increase in revenue, that's their accountability as the person managing that area of your business. If their job is for 5%, but you've been doing a 20% growth in that division or that aspect of your company for 4 quarters now, and this quarter you want to say, well, look, I think we could do 25%, given the history, well, then that may be a good gap to grow in, right? Taking into account that their job's 5%. It would not be a good idea to present to your top talent and say, you know what, here's what I think you should do. What we're going to do is we're going to do a 50% increase. That hasn't been done yet, but I think you can do it given the growth trend that you've been having in the last 4 quarters. So this is something you want to create with the person that you're working with. And if they can own 50% as themselves, for example, then do it. And if they can't, then don't. But you want to start to engender that sense of like a gap with them, and at the same time have them own the gap. So that's with regards to relationships on your team. Then there's relationships with the people with which you connect with. That's with anybody that's a client of yours. That's with anybody that's a potential client of yours, or that's with anybody that you create a new relationship with. Anybody out on the street, at Starbucks, in a networking event. You want to have your business as an entrepreneur turn into you simply meet people all the time, every single day. You're meeting new people and you're creating new relationships with people. So it may be that you just go through your phone book or you grab a stack of business cards that you have from the last networking event and you just start calling people, saying, hi, my name's Eric Rojas. I'm calling just to say hello. We've met each other before. I want to get an idea of what you're up to. Who are you in the world? I want to tell you my mission in the world, who I am, my charter, whatever it is that you want to share with people. But you want to create new relationships with people all the time. That's the kind of person that you want to know yourself as. Not somebody that's always looking for new business, or someone that's looking for new clients, or somebody that's looking for the next big contract, but rather somebody that's always creating new relationships all the time. The other component of that is that you want to give yourself fully to people. So giving yourself fully to people is so important. An authentic connection trumps a simple connection. So connecting with people authentically and connecting with people from your heart is what people remember you for. I remember talking to Eric Rojas that one day, and there's something about him that when I interact with him, like I could really get he's genuine. And I get that all the time, by the way. I interact with people and people say, God, I just love talking to you because there's so many new ideas that you give me. I'm always reinvigorated and inspired by what I'm up to in my life. So you want to create yourself as being that kind of person when you interact with people. The third component of creating relationships with people with which you don't know or that are outside of your team is creating the kind of presence for yourself out in the world that makes a difference in a specific community. I highly recommend this. So you may have created yourself with a particular mission out in the world. For me personally, I've created myself with a particular mission out in the world. My mission out in the world is that who I am is the possibility of being inspirational leadership in the world. So that's why I be in the world. And it gives me my actions. It gives my actions as a coach. But outside of my me working with people as a coach, I've taken it on to create a charity called Envision Charities, where I'm giving myself to people in Mexico, and my team and my partners in the summer of this year are going to be going to a particular town in Mexico, in Tecate, which is where my family's from, And I'm starting a charity in the name of my grandfather, who was very well known in that city. And he was one of the people that founded one of the largest high schools in that city, as well as an elementary school. And I'm doing it in his honor. He passed 2 years ago. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be building homes, providing clothing, as well as shoes and food and water for those families in need that don't have that type of way of living. And my company and my organization is going to be doing that. It's something that really fulfills me. It's something that really allows for me to give myself to people. So as well as when you're creating relationships with other people, it's important that people are connected to you as the person that you've created yourself to be, your mission in the world. So I am an advocate that you give of yourself for free. And not just that you give of yourself for free, but that you give of yourself to a particular community of your choice. A particular community where you're going to impact, that's going to make a real difference for somebody, whatever that may be for you. For me, it is about making a difference for people in their business and in their life. And there's something about me giving myself to the people that really don't have the fundamental items or essence, the fundamental elements of surviving and living a healthy, great life. So I highly recommend that you do that in creating your new relationships with people, and that your new relationships with people are genuine, and that they understand that the person with which they're interacting with and they're meeting is someone who is up to something really big in the world outside of just business. Okay? The last component of what I want to speak about in this webinar series is execution. So execution is by far going to be where the rubber meets the road. In fact, it isn't by far. It is where the rubber's going to meet the road. It is where you're going to need to buckle down and operate consistent with the stage of your project. I like to call these the operating states. Are you operating consistent with the state of your project, is what I say. So I work with my clients a lot from this perspective. One of the big pieces is that a lot of people think that they can behave and operate in the same way when they're starting with something from formulation as when something's in a momentum, especially for entrepreneurs. So there are different ways of being, and there are different ways of acting, and there are different ways of operating and behaving that they change. They're not constant. So you can't be like with your hands like this and, I'm just going to take it easy today. I'm going to take a day off, or, I just closed 2 new contracts and I'm just, I'm going to take it easy for the next couple days. There are different stages of projects. I'm going to lay them out for you. And I'm not going to go too much into depth with these, but please understand that you want to be able to pinpoint where you're at in the state of your project and then behave consistently with where the project is. So the first component of it is operating consistent with the operating state of formulation. So it's when you just begin to formulate your business, you just begin to formulate your project, you're just getting started. At that point, you start to take a stand for something. At that point, you start to create something. At that point, you start to make a name for yourself, a brand. At that point, you establish rules for yourself, like ground rules, like here's when I work. You start to create a routine. That's in formulation. When you're creating that, it's appropriate to create and to be like creative about things. That's critical, right? Then the next piece of that is concentration. So the concentration element of what we're talking about is this is where you get down and do the work. This is like the I'm getting down, I'm promising myself something, I'm going to box myself in for the next hour, the next 4 hours. I'm just going to work until I break through something. It's where you demand of yourself. You operate under pressure. You put pressure on yourself to perform. It's where you have no room for case. So there's no room for any drama. There's no room for any excuses. There's no room for, oh, I didn't do that because of something. There are no excuses. In the state of concentration, it really is that kind of going through the mud, going through the trenches, like really fighting it out to produce a particular result. That's going to be the beginning of your business. That doesn't necessarily just have to be the beginning of your business. That may be how you behave all the time. The state of concentration is perhaps one of the most, you could say, challenging for people. It's I don't know how the way to put it, but it's a space where people don't really want to be in, and you have to be in that space. It's a place where there's no room for anything but work. Okay, I promise you, there's probably a lot of you that are in this space. It also is a space where you take 10 actions of something and you get one result. 10 actions of something for one result. So you may be calling people, having conversations, be like super ineffective, and you have one new client. Okay, we're gonna get into a low momentum going into a high momentum. That's the next state. At this space, you start to clean up stuff that got impacted when you were work. This may be your relationships with other people. You may not have an opportunity to go out and really socialize with the people with which you'd like to because you're strictly working. It's an opportunity for you to reestablish yourself, make those connections with people, do that again. The state of momentum is where you take one action and you get 10 results. The state of momentum is there's a lot of little activity and a lot of big results. So the state of momentum, you can start to not take your foot off the gas pedal, but you can start to be less intense. You can start to play a little in the state, and when your project or your business is in concentration, you cannot be like that. But in momentum, you can. After momentum, one gets into a stability. And in stability is when you really create a routine. You've created a routine for yourself. You've created a winning formula, you could say. You know exactly what you need to do to replicate it over time, every quarter, every year. It's like a routine. There's a stability to the business. At this point, you have to watch your boredom, because things start to get boring because there's no creativity anymore. There's no creating. There's just simply do 1 + 1 = 2, do 1 + 1 = 2, do 1 + 1 = 2, do 1 + 1 = 2. That's it. But that's in the space of stability. You want to start to create the conversation for mastery. So you want to start to master what you're doing. And after mastery, it's turnover or completion. And you complete it, it's complete. You've now mastered that. You can now give it to somebody else and then hand it over and give it away. For those of you that are in that space and you've mastered what you're doing and you're ready to give it away and you're ready to take on the next big project of whatever you're doing, you're going to start back at formulation. Then you're going to move through all those spaces. Those spaces can take you anywhere from a week, depending on the kind of project that you're working on, to years and years and years. Whatever it is for you, you want to find yourself, locate yourself where you are, and then execute. And operate and behave appropriate to where you are on your project. If you're behaving inappropriate to where you are on your project, you're going to find yourself not producing the kinds of results that are at peak levels that you could be producing. Okay? So with that said, that's the end of the 3-session webinar. I so appreciate you being in these 3 sessions. We've talked about strategy, we talked about creating a vision, creating a strategy, what it really looks like to manage yourself and create the kinds of management systems that are required to have you really perform at the level with which you'd like to be performing. The importance of relationships, not only with your team and retaining your top talent, but at the same time, in creating yourself as someone who's really up to something with their life aside from just business, like giving of yourself to a particular community. And then execution, and really behaving appropriately to where you are in the stage of your project. I really appreciate you for taking the time to watch these videos. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message at admin@envisioncoaches.com. Please be on the lookout. There's a lot of great events that are coming live to San Diego, like our SOAR event, our launch event in 2016, our Checkmate event that's coming up. So please be on the lookout for those. You'll be informed as soon as those come out. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video.